the blizzard descended upon Oakhaven like a vengeful spirit, a swirling maelstrom of white that swallowed the familiar world whole. Dr. Eleanor Vance, usually invigorated by the crisp bite of winter air, felt only a profound weariness seep into her bones. Her shift at Oakhaven General had stretched interminably. Eleanor, a woman in her late 30s whose sharp, intelligent eyes often betrayed a flicker of deep compassion, ran a hand through her disheveled brown hair. She'd chosen emergency medicine not for the adrenaline, but for the raw, immediate impact she could make, the tangible difference between life and death. Yet, nights like these, when the world outside seemed determined to grind everything to a halt, tested even her unyielding resolve. She longed for the quiet solitude of her small cottage, the purr of her old cat, and a cup of scalding tea. But duty, a relentless taskmaster, the fluorescent lights of the ER hummed overhead, casting a sterile glow on the few remaining staff. Mark Jensen, a seasoned paramedic with a face etched by years of late nights and tough calls, was hunched over a lukewarm coffee in the break room, his radio crackling softly beside him. Sarah, his younger partner, a bright-eyed newbie still possessing a hopeful naivete. Then came the call. Not the usual static-laden whisper, but a harsh, urgent burst that cut through the monotonous drone of "Our Ambulance 3, we have an urgent pickup. Female, approximate age 70s, collapsed. Remote location, Old Miller Farm Road, just past the abandoned sawmill. Conditions are severe. ETA is critical. Repeat, critical." The dispatcher's voice, usually calm and measured, held a tremor of urgency that sent a chill down Eleanor's spine. Colder than the blizzard itself. Old Miller Farm Road. That was a forgotten track, rarely plowed, winding deep into the isolated stretches beyond the town's reach. In this storm, it would be a death trap. Mark grabbed his coat, his expression grim. "Miller Farm. You've got to be kidding me. That road's a nightmare, even on a sunny day." "We go where we're called. Mark," Eleanor stated, her voice firm, already reaching for her own parka. The adrenaline had kicked in, sharp and invigorating. The weariness receded, replaced by the single-minded focus of Sarah, her vending machine quest abandoned, was already by the ambulance doors, her face pale but determined. "Ready. Mark." As they bundled into the waiting ambulance, the wind howled like a banshee, rocking the heavy vehicle even before it moved. The snow, thick and relentless, hammered against the windshield, threatening to engulf them. The tires spun briefly. The journey was a brutal dance with the elements. The ambulance, a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness, lurched and slid on the icy, unplowed roads. Snowdrifts piled against the headlights like ghostly sentinels, forcing Mark to drive at a crawl. Eleanor, despite her outward calm, felt the gnawing unease deepen with every passing mile. The vast, silent expanse of the snow-covered countryside felt oppressive, swallowing sound and light. "Almost there, I think." Mark grunted, his voice strained as he wrestled the wheel against a particularly strong gust of wind that threatened to push them into a ditch. The dispatcher said just past the old sawmill. "Should be coming up on our right." The words had barely left his lips when something materialized out of the swirling snow directly in front of them. It wasn't a fallen tree, nor a snowdrift, but a living, breathing... "What the hell?" Mark exclaimed, peering through the snow-streaked windshield. Eleanor leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. Standing resolutely in the middle of the narrow, snow-choked road, illuminated by the ambulance's powerful headlights, was a large German shepherd. Its coat, a striking mix of black and tan, was dusted with snow, and its posture was one of unyielding defiance. It wasn't growling, wasn't barking, but simply stood there. "Is it hurt?" Sarah whispered, her initial fear giving way to concern. "Doesn't look like it," Eleanor murmured. "Looks determined." Mark tried to inch the ambulance forward, a low rumble from the engine. The dog didn't budge. He even honked the horn, a short, sharp blast that echoed eerily in the silent storm. The German shepherd remained stoic, a furry, immovable statue. "Come on, boy, move it," Mark muttered, a thread of frustration entering his voice. "We don't have time for this. There's a patient waiting." He tried again, a more sustained honk. The dog merely tilted its head slightly, its gaze unwavering, as if challenging them. It wasn't aggressive, not even wary, but rather possessed an unnerving focus, an almost human-like resolve. It was blocking their path deliberately, unequivocally. Eleanor watched the dog, a strange intuition stirring within her. This wasn't a stray confused by the storm. This wasn't an animal seeking shelter. Its stance, its eyes, everything about it screamed purpose, a purpose that directly involved them. "It's not moving. Mark," Eleanor said, a thoughtful frown creasing her brow. "It's almost as if it wants something from us." Mark scoffed, though a hint of uncertainty flickered in his eyes. "It's a dog, doctor. Probably disoriented by the storm, or looking for food. We can't just sit here." He started to reach for but Eleanor put a hand on his arm, her gaze still locked on the German shepherd. "No. Wait. Look at its eyes. Mark, it's not scared. It's desperate. Like it's trying to tell us something." A shiver, unrelated to the cold, traced its way down her spine. The rational... Eleanor unbuckled her seatbelt. "I'm going out there." "Are you crazy?" Dr. Mark's voice was sharp, laced with disbelief. "It's a wild animal in a blizzard, and we have a patient waiting." "This is our patient, Mark," Eleanor countered, her voice calm but firm, her eyes never leaving the German shepherd. "Or at least, it's leading us to them. Look at it. It's not moving. It's not growling. It's trying to communicate." Against Mark's protests and Sarah's wide-eyed apprehension, Eleanor pushed open the ambulance door. A blast of frigid wind, laden with ice crystals, whipped around her, snatching at her hair and biting at her exposed skin. She shivered, but her resolve didn't waver. Slowly, cautiously, Eleanor stepped out into the swirling white. The snow was already knee-deep in places, making each step a laborious effort. The German shepherd watched her, its body rigid, a silent sentinel. As she drew closer, she could see the subtle tremble in its powerful frame, not from fear, but from the cold, and perhaps from a raw, desperate urgency. "Hello there," Eleanor murmured, her voice soft, reassuring. She kept her hands visible, open, signaling no threat. "What are you doing out here?" The dog didn't respond with a bark or a growl. Instead, it took a hesitant step backward, then another, its eyes flicking from Eleanor to the dense, snow-laden woods to their left, then back to Eleanor, an almost frantic urgency in their depths. It was an unmistakable gesture, a silent plea for her to follow. Eleanor stopped a few feet away, studying the animal. Its fur was thick, but she could see how the snow clung to it, melting slightly from body heat, then refreezing. Its ears were perked, constantly scanning, and its tail, though not wagging, held a slight, almost imperceptible tremor. This wasn't a lost pet. "You want me to follow you?" she asked, speaking more to herself than to the animal, but the dog seemed to understand. It whined softly, a low, desperate sound, and took another step back, nudging its head towards the tree line. Mark, having finally succumbed to a morbid curiosity, had lowered his window a crack. "Eleanor, this is insane. That road we were called to is just around the bend. We're wasting precious time." Eleanor ignored him. Her instincts, honed by years of reading subtle cues in patience, were screaming at her. This dog wasn't leading them into danger. It was leading them to someone who was in danger. There was an intelligence in its gaze, a deep sorrow. "Okay, boy," Eleanor said, making up her mind. "Okay, I'm coming." The dog let out another low whine, then turned and took a few steps into the deeper snow on the side of the road, looking back expectantly. It was clear it wasn't going to move from its position as an obstruction until she followed. "Mark, turn the ambulance around. We're going in there," Eleanor commanded, gesturing towards the thicket of trees. "Turn around," Mark roared, incredulous. "Eleanor, we have an emergency call. A human emergency call. Are you seriously going to follow a stray dog into the woods in a blizzard?" "This dog is trying to save someone. Mark, I can feel it," Eleanor insisted, her voice resonating with an authority that brooked no argument. "My gut tells me this is important. More important than the address we were given. Get the stretcher ready. I have a feeling we're going to need it." She looked at the German shepherd again, and for the first time, a name drifted into her mind, unbidden, but perfect. "Maya," she whispered. The dog, as if recognizing the name, let out a soft, almost hopeful bark, then plunged deeper into the snow, Its dark form of the decision hung heavy in the air, a palpable tension inside the ambulance as Eleanor, a lone figure against the white expanse, followed the German shepherd. Mark, still fuming but overridden by Eleanor's unwavering conviction, slammed. Sarah, however, was gazing after Eleanor with a mix of apprehension and a budding sense of awe. But what if she's right? Mark. Mark let out a frustrated sigh. Fine, but if this goes south, it's on her head. He reluctantly put the ambulance in reverse, skillfully maneuvering the heavy vehicle in the deepening snow until he could turn it around. Then, with a grumble, he guided it off the plowed path, following the faint tracks Eleanor and the dog were making. The large tires crunched through the untouched snow. The vehicle, Eleanor, meanwhile, pressed onward, her boots sinking deep into the powdery snow. The cold was biting, seeping through her thick parka, and the wind whipped snow into her face, blurring her vision. But Maya, the German shepherd, was a focused guide. She moved with an almost ethereal grace through the treacherous terrain. Occasionally looking back, they ventured deeper into the woods, the sparse, snow-laden trees becoming denser, their branches heavy with white. The path, if it could even be called that, was barely discernible, a faint indentation under the fresh snow. Eleanor's breath plumed in the frigid air, her lungs burning with the exertion. She could hear the ambulance struggling behind her, its engine straining, its tires whining against the snow. Mark and Sarah were following, albeit begrudgingly, their duty bound by the desperate hope in Eleanor's eyes. Doubt, an insidious whisper, began to creep into Eleanor's mind. Was she being reckless? Was her intuition leading them into a trap, away from a patient who genuinely needed them? The thought of the elderly woman from the original call, perhaps lying helpless and dying. The silence of the woods, broken only by the howl of the wind and the crunch of their footsteps, was profound. It felt as though they had stepped out of the world, into a timeless, frozen realm where only the raw elements and the silent language of the animal held sway. Eleanor's face was numb with cold, her fingers stiff inside her gloves. But she pushed through, driven by an unwavering belief that Maya knew something, had witnessed something after what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 15 minutes of slogging through the snow. Maya suddenly stopped. She didn't bark, didn't whine, but turned to face Eleanor, her gaze fixed on something just beyond the thicket of snow-covered pines. Eleanor strained her eyes, peering into the swirling white. At first, she saw nothing but more trees, more snow. Then, Mark, who had finally brought the ambulance to a stop a short distance behind them, switched off the engine. The sudden silence was deafening, broken only by the rush of the wind. He and Sarah emerged, their faces etched with a mixture of fatigue and a growing, reluctant curiosity. "Anything. Eleanor?" Mark called out, his voice muffled by the wind. Eleanor didn't answer immediately. Her heart began to pound, a slow, heavy drum in her chest. The small, dark shape slowly, agonizingly, resolved itself into something more concrete. It was small, very small, and it didn't look like an abandoned sawmill. It looked like a structure, hidden deep within the desolate woods. A structure that shouldn't be there. And as the snow momentarily thinned, revealing more, the cabin stood like a ghost in the snow, a phantom dwelling that seemed to defy the very landscape around it. It was small, no more than a single room by the looks of it, its wooden walls almost entirely obscured by a thick blanket of snow that had drifted high against its sides. The windows, dark and small, were crusted with ice, reflecting nothing but the relentless gray of the blizzard. "It looks empty," Mark observed, his voice tinged with skepticism as he joined Eleanor, peering through the swirling snow. "Looks like it's been empty for years." Sarah shivered, pulling her collar tighter. It's creepy, like something out of a horror movie. Eleanor, however, felt a different sensation. Not fear, but a surge of grim determination. Her eyes, honed by years of scrutinizing subtle details in emergency rooms, began to scan the cabin with a focused intensity. No, Eleanor said, her voice a low murmur, barely audible over the wind. It's not empty. Mark frowned. What are you talking about? Look. She pointed, her gloved finger cutting through the air. Over there, by the chimney. Where the thick white of the roof met the small, stone chimney. A faint, almost invisible wisp of smoke curled upwards, dissipating quickly into the turbulent air. It was barely there, a whisper of warmth against the Arctic cold. And look at the snow, Eleanor continued, moving closer, her gaze sweeping the area around the cabin. See the drift by the door. Mark and Sarah followed her gaze. A large drift had piled up against the rickety wooden door, but Eleanor pointed to a subtle disturbance on its surface. It's been disturbed recently. Not a lot, but enough to show someone's been in and out. And these. Woe a right side. She crouched down, brushing away a layer of fresh powder. Beneath it, barely visible, were faint. A sudden, sharp urgency seized Eleanor. The initial patient call, which had felt so critical, now seemed a distant, almost irrelevant memory. This was where they were meant to be. This was the real emergency. Maya, who had remained silent and still, now moved towards the cabin. Someone's in there, Mark, and they need help, Eleanor stated, her voice devoid of any doubt. Badly. Mark, though still unconvinced by the subtle clues, saw the unshakable conviction in Eleanor's eyes, and the desperate pleading in the dog's posture. His professional skepticism, while still lingering, began to yield to the undeniable reality of the situation. They had followed a dog into the heart of a blizzard, and it had led them to a hidden cabin where faint signs pointed. All right, doctor, Mark finally conceded, pulling out his medical bag and nodding to Sarah, who was already reaching for the stretcher. Let's see what our... As Eleanor reached for the door, a wave of profound unease washed over her. The cabin was isolated, intentionally so, it seemed. Why would anyone be out here? The air inside the cabin was a thick, stagnant blanket, heavy with the scent of damp earth, stale wood smoke, and something else. Something sickly sweet and metallic. Hello? Eleanor called out, her voice muffled by the oppressive silence. No answer. Only the distant howl of the wind and the rapid thumping of her own heart. Maya, no longer insistent, padded silently ahead, her posture now one of quiet, mournful vigilance. She stopped abruptly in the center of the tiny room, nudging her nose towards a pile of tattered blankets in the far corner, near the weak glow of the stove. Eleanor's flashlight beam followed Maya's silent direction. What it revealed sent a fresh wave of icy dread through her. Huddled together beneath the threadbare covers were two figures. The first, an elderly woman, lay still and unnaturally pale, her face etched with the lines of age and profound suffering. Her breathing was shallow, barely perceptible, and her skin, when Eleanor gently touched her exposed hand, was shockingly cold and clammy. This was not just illness, this was severe. Beside her, curled into a tiny ball, was a young girl, no older than 10. Her small frame was skeletal, her cheeks sunken, and her lips cracked and blue. Her eyes, when Eleanor shone the light gently on her face, were closed, her eyelashes dark against her pale skin. She was breathing, but each breath was a shallow, painful gasp. Her small hand clutched a worn, headless rag doll, a heartbreaking testament to a childhood tragically cut short. "Oh, my God," Sarah whispered, her hand flying to her mouth, her youthful optimism shattering in the face of such raw, desperate misery. Mark, usually stoic, exhaled slowly, a grim look on his face as he took in the horrifying scene. Eleanor wasted no time. Her medical training took over, pushing aside the shock and horror. "Mark, Sarah, clear the space. Get the stretcher in here. We need to stabilize them immediately." Her voice, though low, was sharp with professional urgency. Mark, recovering quickly, began to move the few sparse, rudimentary pieces of. Eleanor dropped to her knees beside the woman, her gloved fingers immediately going to her wrist to check her pulse. It was thready, almost imperceptible. She moved to the girl, feeling for a pulse in her tiny neck. It was there, but frighteningly weak and erratic. Severe hypothermia, malnourishment, and likely advanced infection. Eleanor rattled off, her mind racing through diagnostic possibilities and immediate interventions. "We need to get their core temperatures up, administer fluids, and get them to the hospital now." Maya, meanwhile, had settled herself protectively beside the young girl, her large body forming a living shield, her eyes never leaving Lily's face. The dog's silent vigil spoke volumes, a profound testament to an unyielding loyalty in the face of unimaginable suffering. It was clear that Maya had been their guardian, their sole protector in this frozen, forgotten corner of the world. The sight of the two helped as Eleanor and her team worked feverishly. The small cabin, once a place of silent suffering, buzzed with the controlled chaos of emergency medicine. Mark, with practiced efficiency, connected the IV drips, administering warming fluids to counteract the severe hypothermia. Sarah, her earlier shock giving way to focused determination while they stabilized the patients. Eleanor's gaze swept the tiny, desolate space. It was stark, almost bare, suggesting a life stripped down to its most basic necessities. But even in this grim setting, fragments of a forgotten existence lay scattered, offering poignant glimpses into the lives of the two silent victims. On a makeshift shelf fashioned from a plank of wood and two upturned crates, Eleanor spotted a small, tarnished silver frame. Inside, a faded photograph showed a younger version of the elderly woman, Martha, her face rounder, her eyes sparkling with a vitality now extinguished. Beside her stood a tall, handsome man with a kind smile, their arms linked. Behind them, a grand, stately house, its windows gleaming, stood proudly amidst a sprawling garden. It was a stark contrast to the squalor of the cabin, hinting at a past life of comfort, perhaps even affluence. Beneath the photograph, tucked between a few moth-eaten books, lay a stack of letters, tied with a brittle, faded ribbon. Eleanor. Then, tucked under the woman's makeshift pillow, Eleanor found it, a small, leather-bound diary. Its pages were brittle, yellowed with age, but the ink remained surprisingly legible. She flipped it open to a random page, her eyes quickly scanning the handwritten entries. The words were terse, often punctuated by ellipses, but a cold, hard knot formed in Eleanor's stomach. This wasn't just poverty. This was a calculated act of cruelty. All the while, Maya watched. She lay curled beside Lily, her large body a warm comfort against the child's tiny frame, her intelligent eyes moving between the humans, observing their every move. She didn't bark. The revelations from Martha's diary struck Eleanor with the force of a physical blow. Each brittle page she had quickly scanned in the flickering light of her headlamp unveiled a narrative far more sinister than simple misfortune. This wasn't a case of an elderly woman falling through all they threw. The entries painted a vivid, horrifying picture of Martha's dwindling world. She had once lived a comfortable life, evident from the photograph, residing in a grand old house that clearly held generations of memories. The early entries detailed his persuasive charm, his assurances that he was looking out for her best interests. He convinced her to sign various documents, ostensibly to streamline her finances and protect her assets. Martha, trusting and perhaps vulnerable due to her age and recent losses, had complied. She had no other immediate family, no children of her own, and Arthur was her closest. But as the months turned into a year, the tone of the diary shifted. Martha's initial trust slowly curdled into confusion, then dawning horror. Payments stopped arriving. Access to her bank accounts became restricted. And then, the ultimate betrayal. Arthur says the house is sold, said it was necessary, for outstanding debts. My debts. I don't understand. Where will Lily and I go? The entries grew in. The cruelest twist was the revelation of Martha's previously unknown wealth. The letters Eleanor had glimpsed, particularly one dated nearly 40 years prior, spoke of a significant family inheritance from a distant, reclusive uncle, a fortune in land and investments that had quietly accumulated over decades, driven by an insatiable avarice. Arthur had then meticulously cut off Martha and Lily from the outside world. The diary chronicled the subtle, insidious ways he achieved this intercepting mail, fabricating stories to concern neighbors about Martha's desire for quiet solitude. Lily's presence in the cabin was another tragic layer to the deception. She was Martha's granddaughter, not by blood, but a child Martha had taken in years ago after Lily's own parents, close family friends, died in a tragic accident. Arthur had known about Lily, had even feigned affection for her initially, but saw her only as an inconvenient complication to his plans. He had knowingly condemned both of them to a slow, agonizing death in the freezing wilderness. The realization hit Eleanor with a sickening clarity. The original ambulance call, the one about an elderly woman at Old Miller Farm Road, was a deliberate decoy. Arthur had likely made it, a calculated move to divert emergency services away from the true location, ensuring Martha and Lily's desperate cries would go unheard. He had left them to die, systematically and without conscience, believing the snow would cover his tracks, literally and figuratively. Eleanor looked from the diary to the frail, unconscious Martha, then to the tiny, shivering form of Lily, protected by Maya. The German shepherd's deep, knowing eyes seemed to confirm every horrifying detail. Maya had been there, a silent witness to the prolonged suffering, the deliberate cruelty. And now, the grim discovery in the cabin, coupled with the shocking revelations from Martha's diary, transformed the ambulance into a mobile crisis unit, driven by a new, fierce urgency. What began as a rescue mission for a single critical patient had spiraled into a complex, multi-victim. We have two critical patients, Mark, Eleanor stated, her voice taut with controlled adrenaline as she re-entered the ambulance. Having helped load Mark, his face grim, nodded. The original call. Eleanor. The dispatcher just got back to me. It was a false alarm. Wrong address or something. The house they gave us is empty. Someone must have given us bad intel. He didn't need to say more. Doesn't matter now, Eleanor said, pulling out her radio. Oakhaven General, this is Ambulance 3. We have a change of status. We are en route with 2 critical patients from a remote cabin near Miller Farm Road. Both female, 1 elderly, 1 pediatric, suffering from severe hypothermia, malnutrition, and suspected neglect. ETA approximately 20 minutes, depending on conditions. Advise ER to prepare for mass casualty protocol, with immediate warming and resuscitation needs. The dispatcher's voice, usually so steady, crackled with alarm. Understood. Ambulance 3. We'll be ready. Stay safe out there. But safety was a distant luxury. The blizzard, as if sensing their desperate haste, intensified its assault. The snow fell thicker. The snow's getting too deep. Eleanor. Mark shouted over the howl of the wind, wrestling the steering wheel. The tires spun, losing traction, the heavy vehicle sliding precariously sideways. We're going to get stuck. Inside the ambulance, Sarah worked diligently, monitoring vital signs, administering medication, her face pale but focused. The small figures of Martha and Lily, bundled in emergency blankets, lay almost swallowed by the stress. Just when despair threatened to set in, a remarkable thing happened. Maya, sensing their plight, rose from her spot. She walked to the front of the ambulance, nudged Mark's leg with her head, then looked. "What's she doing?" Sarah asked, bewildered. Eleanor, her mind racing, suddenly understood. She's trying to tell us something. Mark opened the side door. It's at ours. Mark, though hesitant, had witnessed enough of Maya's uncanny intelligence to trust Eleanor's instincts now. He hit the button, and the side door hissed open, allowing a gust of icy wind and snow to sweep in. Maya immediately jumped out, vanishing into the whiteout. Maya Lily's faint voice, surprisingly strong for her frail state, whispered from the stretcher, a raw plea. Eleanor peered out, her heart pounding. Had the dog abandoned them? Then, just beyond the ambulance's headlights, Maya reappeared. She was standing. "She's leading us." "Mark," Eleanor exclaimed, a surge of renewed hope coursing through Mark. With a desperate prayer, put the ambulance into drive, carefully following the German Shepherd's lead. Maya, an unexpected beacon in the storm, navigated them through what appeared to be a series of snowdrifts that were indeed less deep, or through slight depressions in the terrain that offered better traction. She would stop, wait for the journey was still agonizingly slow, Each yard gained a victory against the relentless elements. But with Maya leading the way, the hospital's emergency room was a whirlwind of controlled chaos when Ambulance 3 finally broke through the blizzard's embrace. The staff, alerted by Eleanor's urgent radio call, was ready. 2 trauma bays had been prepped, warming blankets laid out, and a team of nurses and doctors stood poised. Eleanor wasted no time. Her voice, calm and authoritative despite the grueling journey, cut through the noise as she gave a rapid, concise handover to Dr. Evans, the attending physician. Severe hypothermia, advanced malnutrition, suspected neglect. Elderly female, mid-70s. Dr. Evans, a pragmatic and experienced doctor, raised an eyebrow at the mention of the dog but didn't question it. The immediate priority was the patients. Get them on cardiac monitors, warm saline IVs, thermal blankets. Let's get a full blood panel, toxicology, and imaging stat. Dr. Vance, you're clear to assist. While the medical team swarmed around Martha and Lily, working to stabilize their fragile lives, Eleanor found herself drawn to the small, sad figure of Lily. The girl's eyes fluttered open briefly, revealing a startling blue, before closing again. But not before Eleanor saw a flicker of recognition, a silent plea. Maya, sensing Eleanor's presence, nudged her hand with her wet nose, then rested her head gently on Lily's arm. A loyal guardian in the sterile, unfamiliar. Later, as Martha's condition slowly stabilized and Lily was moved to the pediatric ward for intensive care, Eleanor retreated to the quiet hum of the doctor's lounge. She pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. This wasn't just a medical case anymore. It was a crime. While her primary duty was healing, she also believed fiercely in the principle. Eleanor began her investigation with meticulous care, just as she would approach a complex diagnosis. She cross-referenced the names in the diary with publicly available records. A quick search revealed Arthur Thorne, indeed a local businessman, with a seeming. Digging deeper, Eleanor also located public records detailing the sale of Martha's own cherished home, listed under Thorne Property Management's portfolio. The following morning, the blizzard had finally retreated, leaving Oakhaven shrouded in a pristine, blinding white. But for Arthur Thorne, the calm outside would soon be shattered. Eleanor, armed with a meticulously compiled dossier of evidence, the diary entries, the old letters, the legal notices, and the property records she had unearthed, had presented her findings to Detective Miller. Moved swiftly. By noon, a police cruiser, its siren blessedly silent, pulled up to the polished glass entrance of Thorne Property. The sight of Detective Miller and Dr. Vance standing in his doorway, however, sent a cold shard of ice through his carefully constructed composure. His practiced smile faltered. Arthur Thorne, we need to ask you a few questions regarding Martha Albright and Lily Thorne, Detective Miller stated, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. Eleanor stood beside him, her gaze unwavering, her eyes burning with Arthur forced a chuckle. Martha and little Lily. Good heavens, is everything all right? I haven't been able to reach them for days, what with this terrible weather. I was just about to call the police. Actually, to report them missing. The lie rolled off his tongue effortlessly, a lifetime of practice behind it. Save it. Mr. Thorne, Eleanor cut in, her voice sharp, cutting through his charade. They're at Oakhaven General, barely clinging to life, and we know why. Arthur's face paled, but he quickly recovered, feigning indignation. "What are you implying?" "Doctor, I've done nothing but care for my aunt. I've managed her affairs, seen to her comfort." "Taught comfort." Eleanor scoffed, a rare display of raw emotion from the usually composed physician. "You left them to starve in a freezing cabin in the middle of a blizzard. Arthur, you stole everything from them. Their home, their money, their dignity. You wanted them to die so you could inherit a fortune you didn't even know existed until you started your monstrous scheme." Arthur's eyes darted between Eleanor and the unyielding detective. The smooth facade began to crack. "That's ridiculous. My aunt signed everything over willingly. She was old, confused. She wanted simplicity." "She wanted simplicity, or you wanted control." Detective Miller interjected, his voice low and dangerous. He pulled out a small, sealed plastic bag. Inside was the worn leather diary. "Does this look familiar, Mr. Thorne?" "Your aunt's own words, detailing your visits. The papers she signed." Arthur's eyes fixed on the diary, and the color drained from his face completely. His jaw clenched. He recognized it. He had specifically told Martha to burn it, to rid herself of such morbid thoughts. The thought that it had survived, and was now in the hands of the police, sent a wave of genuine panic through him. "And these," Eleanor added, pushing a stack of photocopied documents across his desk. "The old letters, the probate records, the undervalued sale of Martha's house. Proof of the inheritance you conveniently forgot to mention. Proof of the false claims you made about her debts. Proof of how you systematically isolated them." Cornered, exposed, and with the weight of the undeniable evidence pressing down on him, Arthur Thorne finally broke. The respectable businessman crumbled into a pathetic shell, the years of carefully constructed lies collapsing around him. He sank into his chair, burying his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. I I didn't mean for them to die," he choked out, his voice thin and reedy, devoid of its former arrogance. I needed the money. The business was struggling. And she had so much just sitting there. I thought no one would ever know." His confession, though mumbled and filled with self-pity, was a stark admission of guilt, the full scope of his calculated betrayal, of his cold-hearted decision to condemn his own flesh and blood to a slow, agonizing end, hung heavy in the air. The justice Eleanor had instinctively sought, spurred by the news of Arthur Thorne's arrest, ripped through Oakhaven like a sudden, violent gust of wind after the blizzard, leaving a trail of shock and disbelief in its wake. Arthur, a man who had cultivated an image of quiet respectability and civic engagement, was now exposed as a calculating villain. The initial whispers quickly escalated into a roar of outrage as the full, horrifying details of his betrayal became public. The story of Martha Albright and Lily Thorne, discovered near death in a forgotten cabin, rescued by an ambulance crew guided by a loyal German shepherd, dominated local headlines and soon spread far beyond the small town. Detective Miller, true to his word, had wasted no time. Arthur Thorne was formally charged with attempted murder, aggravated assault, fraud, and unlawful detainment. The evidence Eleanor had meticulously gathered, combined with Thorne's tearful confession, created an ironclad case. The legal process moved swiftly, fueled by public outcry and the undeniable severity of the crime. At Oakhaven General, the hospital became a focal point of both concern and admiration. Nurses and doctors who had heard the incredible story flocked to Martha and Lily's rooms, offering extra care and comfort. Eleanor Vance, initially wary of the spotlight, found herself hailed as a hero. Local news crews, braving the still treacherous roads, descended upon the hospital, eager to interview the doctor who had trusted her intuition over protocol, leading to the miraculous rescue. Sir. Vance says, how did you know to follow the dog? A reporter pressed. Microphone extended. Eleanor, maintaining her professional composure, explained simply. Maya wasn't just a dog. She was a desperate animal trying to save her family. Her eyes, her persistence, they spoke volumes. Sometimes, you have to listen beyond what's logical. She carefully omitted the more sensational details about the diary and the full extent of Arthur's depravity, allowing the police to manage the criminal investigation. The story of Maya, the intelligent and loyal German shepherd, became an instant legend. She was no longer just the dog, but a symbol of unwavering devotion. The hospital staff, initially bewildered by a canine presence in the sterile environment, quickly grew accustomed to her quiet, protective vigil by Lily's bedside. Maya became an unofficial therapy dog, her calming presence a comfort to both Lily and the recovering Martha. As Martha slowly regained consciousness, frail but lucid, Eleanor carefully explained what had happened, sharing the news of Arthur's arrest and the recovery of her diary. A profound sadness washed over Martha's face, not for Arthur, but for the shattering of her trust and the ordeal Lily had endured. But then, a flicker of something new ignited in her eyes resolve. My property, Martha whispered, her voice raspy but clear. My home. Is it truly restored? Eleanor nodded. Yes. Martha, the police have seized all of Arthur's fraudulent transfers. Your entire estate is being restored to you. It's substantial. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Martha's lips. Good, she murmured, a single tear tracing a path down her weathered cheek. It wasn't relief over the money, Eleanor realized, but a sense of justice being served. The wicked had been exposed, and the truth, hidden beneath layers of deceit and snow, had finally been brought to light. The immense wealth Arthur Thorne had so coveted, believing it would be his, was now firmly back in its rightful hands, ready to become a foundation for a new beginning. The weeks that followed Arthur Thorne's arrest were a period of slow, arduous healing. Martha's recovery was a testament to her inherent resilience, though it was punctuated by periods of profound weakness. Her body, ravaged by neglect, fought valiantly, inch by agonizing inch. Lily, on the other hand, a child of 10, rebounded with the astonishing speed of youth. Once past the initial critical phase, her bright blue eyes lost their haunted look, replaced by a spark of nascent curiosity and, most wonderfully, a burgeoning joy. And always, by her side, was Maya. The German Shepherd had become Lily's shadow, her protector, and her closest confidant. During Lily's recovery in the pediatric ward, Maya was a constant, comforting presence. She would rest her head on the edge of Lily's bed, her intelligent eyes watching over the girl, a silent guardian. The hospital, initially hesitant about a permanent canine resident, quickly made an exception for Maya. Her calming influence on Lily, and indeed on other young patients who visited her, was undeniable. Lily, still too frail for boisterous play, would spend hours gently stroking Maya's soft fur, whispering secrets into her ear, finding solace in the dog's unwavering loyalty. Eleanor, deeply moved by their plight and the remarkable bond between Lily and Maya, became a regular visitor. Beyond her medical duties, she found herself drawn to the small, resilient family. She brought books for Lily, warm blankets for Martha, and endless praise for Maya. She saw in them not just patients, but a living testament to the human and canine spirit's ability to endure and find light, even after the darkest of trials. Their resilience, their quiet strength, resonated deeply with Eleanor, reminding her why she had chosen her demanding profession. The community of Oakhaven, once stunned by the betrayal, now rallied around Martha and Lily with an outpouring of compassion. Food, clothing, and toys for Lily poured in. Local businesses offered support, and neighbors who had believed Arthur's lies now expressed profound regret and offered genuine assistance. The old cabin was quickly cleared out by volunteers, its grim memories banished. Martha, once stable enough, was moved to a comfortable, accessible room in a local assisted living facility, carefully chosen by Eleanor, while Lily remained under supervised care at the hospital. Maya still her constant companion. One crisp afternoon, as Lily was finally strong enough to sit up in a wheelchair and be taken for a short stroll in the hospital's small, snow-dusted garden, Eleanor joined them. Maya walked dutifully beside Lily's chair, her tail gently thumping against the wheels. "I don't remember much about the cabin," Lily confessed, her voice still soft but gaining strength. "Just the cold. And Maya. She always kept me warm." Martha, who had been brought down in her own wheelchair, reached out a trembling hand to caress Maya's head. "She saved us, Eleanor. She's a gift." A profound sense of peace had settled over Martha, the terror of her ordeal slowly replaced by gratitude and a renewed sense of purpose. The weight of Arthur's betrayal still lingered, a scar on her past, but the knowledge that he was being brought to justice, and that she and Lily were safe, allowed her to look forward. "She certainly is," Eleanor agreed, a warm smile gracing her lips. "And she led us to an incredible discovery about your past. Martha, your family's legacy." Martha's eyes, though still weary, held a newfound spark. "It's not about the money, Doctor. Not anymore. It's about what we do with it. What we can build from this. For Lily. And for Maya. The hidden wealth, once a source of her near destruction, now represented an opportunity. A chance to forge a new beginning. Not just for themselves, but for others." Eleanor watched them, a profound sense of satisfaction settling in her heart. They were fragile. Yes. But they were no longer alone. No longer forgotten. They were on the path to a new beginning. A testament to the power of kindness, resilience, and the extraordinary bond between a girl and her loyal German shepherd. As the seasons turned, the tender shoots of recovery blossomed into a vibrant new life for Martha and Lily. The vast inheritance, once a dark secret that nearly cost them everything, became the foundation of an extraordinary dream. They decided to use their restored wealth not for personal luxury, but to build a legacy of kindness, a testament to the unexpected heroes who had saved them. "We want to create a place," Martha explained to Eleanor one sunny afternoon, her voice stronger now, her eyes bright with purpose. "Where animals like Maya, who are lost or abandoned, can find a safe haven, and a place where people who are struggling, like Lily and I were, can find shelter and a new start." Eleanor, deeply touched by their vision, listened as they meticulously planned the Oak Haven Sanctuary for Resilience and Hope. It was more than just an animal shelter. It was to be a beacon for both two-legged and four-legged souls in need. Part of the substantial land that had been wrongfully seized by Arthur Thorne was reclaimed. A vast, beautiful expanse of rolling hills and woodlands that would become the heart of their new venture. Construction began the following spring. Large open kennels with spacious outdoor runs were built, designed with a focus on animal comfort and welfare. A separate wing was dedicated to providing emergency housing for families facing homelessness, offering not just a roof over their heads but also counseling, job placement assistance, and educational support for children. Martha, with Eleanor's guidance, established a board of directors, ensuring the sanctuary would be managed with integrity and compassion for generations to come. Maya, of course, was the sanctuary's unofficial mascot and a constant, cherished presence. She was no longer just Lily's dog. She was the silent, furry guardian of Oak Haven Sanctuary. Her intelligence and calm demeanor made her a natural ambassador, greeting visitors and comforting nervous newcomers. She would often be seen patrolling the grounds, her keen senses alert, ensuring everything was safe and peaceful. Lily, now thriving, bloomed under Martha's loving care and the sanctuary's nurturing environment. She attended a local school, excelled in her studies, and spent every free moment helping at the sanctuary. She developed a remarkable understanding of animal behavior, a quiet empathy learned from Maya. The once frail child, who had barely survived a blizzard of human cruelty, was growing into a strong, compassionate young woman. Her past a stark reminder of resilience, her future a testament to hope. Eleanor Vance, though still dedicated to her demanding career as an emergency physician, found herself increasingly involved with the sanctuary. She volunteered her medical expertise, providing care for the rescued animals and even offering pro bono consultations for the shelter residents. Visiting Oak Haven Sanctuary became a cherished escape from the sterile environment of the hospital, a place where she could witness the tangible impact of kindness and the power of second chances. She would often find Martha and Lily sitting together on a porch swing overlooking the sprawling sanctuary grounds, Maya resting at their feet. The elderly woman, once so close to death, now exuded a serene strength, her face softened by contentment. Lily, no longer gaunt, laughed easily, her eyes sparkling with life. Their bond, forged in the crucible of adversity, was unbreakable, a silent promise to each other and to the loyal dog who had brought them back from the brink. The hidden fortune, twisted by greed, had been redeemed by generosity, transformed into a living legacy of compassion that brought light to countless lives. A quiet triumph echoing through the Oak Haven hills. Years turned into decades, and the Oak Haven Sanctuary for Resilience and Hope flourished, growing into a renowned institution far beyond the quiet borders of the town. What began as an act of profound gratitude became a living testament to the power of kindness, the unwavering strength of the human spirit, and the extraordinary impact of an animal's loyalty. Dr. Eleanor Vance, her hair now touched with silver, became a beloved and respected figure, not just in the medical community, but also as a dedicated advocate for animal welfare and social justice. The story of the German shepherd who blocked the ambulance in the snow became a cornerstone of her lectures and public speaking engagements. She often recounted the tale, emphasizing that sometimes the most profound truths and the greatest acts of heroism emerge from the most unexpected places, guided by an intuition that transcends logic. She continued to visit the sanctuary often, her eyes reflecting the deep satisfaction of witnessing a vision come to life. Martha, living a long and fulfilling life, remained the matriarch of the sanctuary. Her gentle wisdom and quiet strength guided its growth, ensuring that its mission remained true to its founding principles. She saw every rescued animal, every sheltered family, as a testament to Maya's silent plea and Eleanor's unwavering resolve. She passed away peacefully, surrounded by the love she had cultivated, knowing that her legacy of kindness would endure. Lily, no longer the frail child of the blizzard, grew into a compassionate and formidable woman. She dedicated her life to the sanctuary, eventually taking over its directorship, running it with the same quiet dedication and fierce empathy that had defined Martha. She pursued a degree in animal science and social work, merging her passion for animals with her commitment to helping vulnerable people. Her laughter, once so rare, now echoed freely through the sanctuary grounds, a joyful sound of a life fully lived. And then there was Maya. She lived a long, full life, a constant, beloved presence at Lily's side. Her fur, once black and tan, softened to a gentle silver around her muzzle, but her eyes retained their deep intelligence, their profound wisdom. She was the sanctuary's beating heart, its living legend. Children who visited the sanctuary would whisper stories of the heroic German shepherd who saved 2 lives, and Maya, with a regal calm, would accept their gentle pats and admiring glances. She was a silent reminder that even in the darkest blizzards, hope can find a way, and that the bond between humans and animals can be a force for undeniable good. The cabin where Martha and Lily were found was eventually restored, not as a dwelling, but as a small, quiet museum. Inside, a plaque recounted their story, and a preserved copy of Martha's diary was displayed. A stark reminder of betrayal, but also of resilience. It served as a powerful testament to the hidden truth that almost perished in the snow, and the incredible chain of events that brought justice and a new beginning. The story ends with Lily, now a woman in her prime, walking through the sun-drenched grounds of the Oakhaven Sanctuary. By her side, older but still vibrant, was Maya. Her steps a little slower, but her spirit as strong as ever. Lily reached down, her fingers stroking Maya's soft head. The world had changed, but some bonds were timeless. And in the peaceful hum of the sanctuary, filled with the happy barks of rescued dogs and the hopeful sounds of families rebuilding their lives, the quiet heroism of a German shepherd continued to echo, a permanent legacy of an unforgettable winter night when everything changed.